And as Jacque said, don't be polite, you know. Ask the hard-hitting questions, whatever you feel is necessary. And unlike politicians, you'll probably answer them for you, okay? Okay. This guy, where are we going? This guy up here, Andrew. Yeah. He's got a mic here.
What's the difference between this ideal and the communist ideal?
Communism has social stratification. Communism has banks and money. Communism has armies and navies. Communism has a government. We have none of those things.
Communism is also interested in the labor class. We are too, but we want to eliminate the labor as soon as possible and automate using the best of science and technology. They never really had a plan or a method.
The communism isn't radical enough for this age. It was great a couple of hundred years ago, maybe, but it doesn't. It's too old-fashioned a method based on opinions rather than technology.
Okay.
Socialism along with it, too old-fashioned and not enough detail of what to do about it. Socialists never came up with how transportation would be designed, how schools would be designed, how to change human values, no detail. So it was the beginning, but it always became corrupt. Socialism and communism became corrupt because it's subject to those things.
They also had elitism too, which helped the corruption.
Yes.
Okay.
If all the nations agreed to your plan, how do you see it being implemented?
Well, first we want to do a major motion picture, as we talked, in terms of implementation. I mean, going back before, if they all agree. We want to do a major motion picture to show what life could be like in the future, show what we're missing, because most people have no idea. We look at it as kind of therapy for transition, social therapy for transition. And we'd like people to walk out of that film and say, well, why don't we do this today? At the end of the film, we'd like to show that we're breaking ground on the first city. We'd like to build the first city, and in the first city, we would have the planners for the next city and people who are making all sorts of media, books, videos, gaming, everything to introduce this direction, because it's really an educational educational problem at this time. They have to understand it. It's not that we could just build a city and then have people move in if they don't have a good understanding of this. So this is what we need. We see how we need to go. And we'd have the first city, and people from all over the world would come, and then hopefully build another city in their country and go on like that.
Nice. Could you talk more about the technologies that would be used for the cities beneath the ocean to deal with the pressures and other things that you may want to talk about?
Technology of the cities in the ocean to deal with the pressures.
What's it for? They're not cities under the ocean. That's a mistake. The cities in the sea are designed to restore the reefs. And where I said we dumped 65 tons of nerve gas to clean out all the ships pump their bilge into the ocean. You can't keep doing that without destroying the ocean environment. And the Japanese are overfishing, according to some countries. They're overfishing because they can sell it. But and in Africa, natives are killing animals. They're called poachers. If you don't supply food for them, and they have no access to food, they're going to be poachers, whatever they can do to get by.
You'd have to put the mic up there.
What was that?
He's asking about the technologies in the cities and the sea.
About the technologies?
Yeah, like more exactly, how would you do it? How can you build in these sorts of remote places, like the actual technology that we would use? I understand the social implications, but more of the kind of physics of it.
The reverberation, and these
What
gadgets don't work too good.
Yeah, Jacque's hard of hearing, that's why I have to tell him, what type of technology would you use for those remote places such as cities in the sea?
Well, we have multi-decked agriculture hanging under the cities and the sea. And there are many things you can grow in salt water, food. And then we would build a hydroponics farm in the city. Hydroponics is soilless agriculture. Where areas of the earth do not have arable land, we will build hydroponic farms, soilless agriculture. And we will, instead of sending packages of food or to Africa or India, what we would do is dehydrate the food, take the fluids out, so that a vat this size will feed many people. So the technology of the future is to keep sonar running through the oceans, all through the oceans. The American military already has sonar in most of the oceans to detect enemy submarines. So we will use sonar for tsunami. If you get a big wave, it notifies every land around there that a tsunami will be there in 5 hours or 2 hours. Do you understand? But if a tsunami occurs suddenly, there's a, I don't know if you can understand this, there's a concrete wedge in the ocean a half a mile away from the island, and that parts the waters so it doesn't do damage. But building a dam in front of the whole island is the old way, the wrong way. It's good for contractors, building a dam. Yes. You want to take it?
Sorry. Sorry. Hi, do you think it's possible to make a peaceful transition to this economy, say through one industry at a time, or does the system have to completely fail before it's possible?
We don't think there's enough time for people to make a peaceful transition. That's just not where they're at. They're not looking for anything else. People really aren't educated well enough on behaviorism, on the systems that society promote, and unfortunately, it looks like it will take a crash before people look for something else. They have to become disillusioned with their elected leaders and be homeless before they look for other alternatives. And then it's usually, what's in it for me? They look for the wrong reasons.
I can't, but he had his hand up a long time.
There we are. You got this guy, Richard? Yeah.
What are all the different ways that we can help the Venus Project?
Did you get that?
Yeah, different ways that could help the Venus Project. Well, there's how to get involved on our website. And on the Zyguides movement site, there are a lot of things that you can do. We also have the Venus Project design team for technical people that you can go and sign up. The venusprojectdesign.com, right? That's going live today. Animators are doing hundreds of animations of Jacque's sketches, and he has literally thousands of them. New inventions, new designs for a new world. We'd like to use some of those in the film, and like to use them in our films, and Peter Joseph will be using some of them too. Really help in any ways that you can. If you really can't do anything, if you're not in a field that you can help with, get our material, learn as much as you can about it, and talk to others, because as I said, it's really an educational problem right now. You know, talk about the new value system.
And if you do nothing, nothing will happen.
We have no power. We don't have any money. We can't make it happen. A lot of people come to us and say, well, you should be doing this, or hey, how about this idea? And they put it on us, and we're up to here with our work now. We work all the time. So we really like people to come with ideas and see how they can implement it, and we'll work with you.
Okay, guy at the top there.
Jacque, in regards to eliminating money bartering and sort of trade value, one example we thought of how this might come in automatically is products that are made with personal touches. If someone as a hobby makes a piece of furniture or clothing that has a personal touch, and other people want it and they attribute value to that, would bartering not start coming back in as a result?
You're talking about if there's scarcity of something that many people would want, you feel
If
barter
there's
would come in?
scarcity as a result of someone having a personal touch to something that they make, you know, in terms of arts and crafts, and other people would like a piece of that.
Do you think people would start bartering for things that are scarce, like art pieces that people have
Only
made?
during the transition. But if you have, say you have a collection of 10 or 15 paintings by very famous artists after the social change, we ask you, please, why don't you put your paintings out so all people can enjoy them? He says, no, they're mine. So we put that in the newspaper. He said, no, they're mine. That'll take care of the problem. So you see, people would be inclined, if they have a wonderful collection of medias or personal collection, that would circulate around and show everybody. Personal possessions is almost shameful. If you make a painting, you can't sell it, you can give it to people that you like. That's the beginning that will help human beings. But if it's a monetary system, you're going to have problems. Yes.
Hi. If a survey of the world's needs is completed and we identify that we don't have enough, who decides on how those resources are used? And would we find ourselves in a controlled society where, for example, in China you can only have one child, or this year we can't have any children because there's not enough resources?
What's that?
So really, who would control the resources?
If there's a scarcity in some resources, who would control them?
Okay. I don't know if you know this, but during World War II, we formed a blockade. So Germany couldn't get to Sumatra to get rubber. So they invented synthetic rubber. The Germans were highly technical. I'm not upholding them. I say if your country has technicians at the high point, it's very easy to solve all scarcity problems. There's nothing that man can't work on or overcome. Like the Arab world didn't have the weapons we had, so they took over airplanes and hit it, the two towers, because there's no way you can secure yourself. They say at the airports, we x-ray your baggage and all that. I can design clothing that gives off poison gas, fabric. So there's no way you can really protect yourself, because whatever you think of, somebody else out there has a brain too. They can think around that. Do you know what I mean? The only security is one world, sharing resources, otherwise you're going to war continuously. Now that, if you don't understand what I'm saying, raise some other questions about it.
But who would control those resources, Jacque?
Who would control those resources?
Okay. When you have the change, the social change, I don't think you want to control those resources. So the resources be allocated first to hospitals where people are needy and they can't access those things. And it would be used in terms of the most appropriate thing. For example, if a ship is sinking today, it's women and children first. What I would do is, do you know anything about navigation? Yeah, get on the boat. Can you catch fish at sea? Yeah, get on the boat, then women and children. But women and children is a kind of a hangover that's pleasing to people, but it doesn't solve the problem. It's the same thing with resources. Resources are allocated to the most needed places, and people are told that it's just a matter of 3 months or 4 months they'll be able to make a substitute material. Bear with us. Now, if some people can't bear with us, they're helped. They're not put in prison.
He's afraid of a control group. Who would be controlling it? You know, first of all, people would have to agree that they want to go along with this direction, which is really no control, but the intelligent management of the Earth's resources. If they want this direction where we use all the resources in that way, then we lay out the plan of how to feed, house, clothe, and educate people. So, you know, if they go along with this, then there's a procedure that we carry out, because that's the end goal. The control is the end goal. And there won't be people in position of power to control resources. They don't make policy. The scientists do not make policy. We have a direction that's laid out, and if they want to go along with this, the Venus Project, then that allocates. And it's not even that. We take a survey of the Earth's resources, find out where we need different things. If we find that there are many people diseased in a certain area, we have more hospitals there, because that's the end goal, to take care of the needs of people.
I want to give you an example. 2 million people die every year in Africa of malaria, and they spray poisons in the water, and that spreads all over the place. That's the way we solve problems today. In the future, we have a light under the swamp with a color spectrum turning, and that attracts the malaria mosquitoes into the swamp. At night, they drown, and the fish eat them, and we get more food. Do you understand? Okay. There are other ways of doing things other than spraying poison. When you got termites, you live in a wooden building, you get termites. We don't have any wooden buildings. They can burn. So we make composite materials that don't burn. Now, if you say, well, I like a wooden house, then it's your problem. Yes.
You get all these problems in terms of control when there's scarcity, and then you have an advantaged group that controls the resources. That's what we're trying to make a proposal to eliminate the problems that they have today. We're trying to design a society that surpasses the needs of control groups, of politicians, of aberrant behavior. And if you want that, then you work towards it.
Yep. I got a lot of questions from the last week's lecture in Copenhagen, where a lot of people asked me if all these technologies we see in the video, are they really developed fully and operational? I mean, could you do this tomorrow if you had the funds?
We could have done it in 1927. It's not the technology that's the problem, it's the value system. Do we have the technology to build this today from your film?
We could have built it in 1927.
Yeah. Great answer. Great answer.
Hello. There's just something that worries me about the whole zeitgeist thing. There's a very clear illustration of how capitalism is operated, and a very clear illustration of how the Venus project could be, but the area in the middle seems to be very misty. Roxanne, you have said that perhaps a new society could be formed bit by each country building a city all over the world. But this reminds me of cooperatives and kibbutzim, which were subsumed by capitalism itself. What I envisage is a system where we elect zeitgeist delegates to the various parliaments all over the world, and it results in a situation where there's a worldwide mass referendum to canvass public support, and only then will we know whether people want a Venus project or not, because this movement is going to grow inexorably to the extent that it will become unwieldy and vast. And I think without a mass referendum, we cannot get to this next society. Would you agree with me?
We're all for any method that helps, you know, but first they have to be introduced to it and know what it's about.
Yes.
But we don't see it going that way towards, in a political manner, because, you know, you have to raise a lot of funds to get out there, and then you're backed by certain people and you owe favors to certain people. So I think there will be we feel there'll be a big enough mass movement as things start to fall apart and we can get the ideas out there that we don't need to go that route. But if some people want to do that and you get a referendum, fine, any way it can get exposed. Yeah, we're for any way that works.
My question is basically, because technology runs the resource-based society of the Venus Project, obviously. What's to stop, like, the people who are scientists, the technological scientists that control the fabric of the society rather than over someone whose job is painting to give to their friends for free?
Do you understand that?
You're worried about the scientist controlling things?
Yeah, what would you propose to prevent the people who actually run the fabric of the society rather than the artists who paint for their own fulfilling joy to give to other people.
You're worrying about the scientists being corrupt or being
Yeah.
elitism. He's worried about elitism within the scientists.
Okay. The scientific community, somebody said that to me. What if somebody comes along that's 10 times as bright as you are? I'll get the hell out of the way, because they can make my life better. You see, I'm not threatened by unemployment. No one would be. So you have no reason to egotistically fight other people, because you all have a high standard of living. Let me put it your way. The people under the Venus Project in the future will live better than the wealthiest people today. If you don't understand that, the middle-class American, that's where I come from, lives better than kings. They have air conditioning in their car, television, cell phones. No king ever had that. But if you turn science and technology loose for the benefit of everyone, the smarter your kids are, the richer my life. If I try to egotistically say, well, I thought of that first, you know, all that sort of thing, which you have today, which is very damaging. Don't forget, people today are damaged. The people that get trained or exposed to the Venus Project learn how to build prefabricated houses, how to solve water shortage problems. For example, there are floods all over America, and they don't harness that water and put it in water storage basins where we did strip mining and loused up the earth. We can direct all flood waters and harness that. Today, the people flood it out of that, and they sell water for a buck of glass today. Because we're not, the politicians don't know what to do.
And scientists don't have any advantage. No group has any advantage to access to anything. So there's nothing that they can hold over someone else. And they don't rule things or hold decision-making over other people. Everyone has access.
Let me put it your way. If you come up with a good idea and you lift when you speak, people may not vote for you. So we get people that can read and speak very well, and they present different programs. You vote on it, and there's a guy in a wheelchair, all twisted up, I can hardly speak. It's the ideas that count, not how they look. Are they tall and good looking? I'll vote for them. You see, we're so warped today, we can't hear things from a person that doesn't look as good as another person.
Okay, the mic's working.
Hello. I see the current monetary system as a huge hurdle for the realization of the Venus Project and resource-based economy. Do you think that we should tackle the monetary system first in order to get there as a sort of an intermediate step? Or do you think that the problem will solve on its own? And when I say tackle the system, I mean propose alternative systems like interest-free economy, etc. Funding is a major problem, I seem to understand today. In order to make this happen, you don't have funds. But people are too worried about making ends meet today. They don't have enough money, so it's difficult to draw people into this. So how do you get funds? Maybe we should work on the monetary system first.
Should we work in the monetary system first to get funds to make it?
Well, we're all trapped. We live in a monetary system. You have to pay rent, you have to buy food, and you have to prostitute yourself in order to get money. So I don't know. The transition will be painful. There will be problems. People will shoot other people. You know, there's nothing I can do about the transition. Transition has always been painful. It depends on how much work you do to enable people to understand. If you leave here and do nothing, I can assure you nothing will happen.
What about proposing like...
It depends on you, what you do. If you tell people how the Venus Project attempts to solve problems, what their approach is. If you don't know how to talk that way, look at thevenusproject.com. And there we have thousands of questions and answers, and we have various descriptions of the type of energy we're going to use, how it's used, where to get it, how to do it. There's a how-to all through the Venus Project. It's not about, we don't know this, we don't know that. There are a lot of people like that. But all my life I've been gathering information on how to deal with that. I used to teach dogs how to lead the blind. When I was a kid, they used to walk with a white stick. Then thereafter, I designed a gadget that you wear in your ears that generates sound, and you can hear an open door, so a blind man never banged into it. If he came in a room, he can hear the shape of a table acoustically, just like a bat flies, and it's semi-blind, and it avoids obstruction. Why can't we do that for the blind? They don't have to live in a city for the blind. All they have to do is have these things that work. So when I trained these dogs to lead the blind before that, people used to come over and say, "What a nice dog." And I said to them, I trained that dog to lead the blind, but I could have trained him to tear Japanese soldiers to pieces. The dog isn't good or bad, it's the way it's brought up. Do you understand that?
Do you have anything specific on interest-free economy in the Venus project? Like getting rid of interest, usury?
There is no money in the Venus project. There is no interest. There's no barter.
I mean, as a transition, now we live in a monetary system, so getting to interest-free economy as a bridge to that, as a proposal.
Well, he's asking what the transition would be as a bridge, a barter system.
The transition would be allocation of resources, meaning if you have a lawnmower, you put it in the center so different people can use it when you're through with it. Bicycles are all there for your use. We will, in other words, the industries fail during social change. Chevy, General Motors failed. We bailed them out. We gave the money to the people that created the problem, meaning our system is basically corrupt as hell. If you take public funds where teachers can earn more and you give it to the banks and the establishment, that isn't sane, that's corrupt. So the reason you don't have a smooth transition is because the politicians are ignorant people. They know investment banking, advertising, resource management, and these aren't professions that will help people. The professions, like people come to me and say, what should my child study to have a job in the future? A profession you never heard of. The profession will be new in the future. There'll be no banking, no advertising, no profiteering. Do you understand? The professions of the future will be environmental restoration, taking care of health of people, from youngsters to old people. All get health care, whether you have money or not. There's no money in the system, so you can't pay off anybody. You can't buy a congressman off. As long as you've got money around, you're going to have corruption. No matter how many nice laws you invent, it doesn't work. And if you make money selling drugs, and I say no to drugs, you're some kind of a pinhead that's going to respond to say no to drugs. A pinhead wrote that, the wife of the president. Real stupid person. I'm sorry about that.
Fascinating. Thank you very much for a very refreshing talk. I really enjoyed it. But I want to press you on the point of the transition between the current unpleasant, corrupt state that you've described, which I think many of us would probably agree with, and the rather wonderful picture you paint of the future. My particular point is about the they that is supposed to exist or not exist. I was interested to hear your colleague Peter Joseph insist that there was no such thing as they, some kind of corporate entity that is finally responsible for all this corruption and unpleasantness. But on the other hand, you this afternoon have said pretty explicitly that you think and recognize that there is such a group as they, what we may call the power holders, the corporate entity. My question to you is, surely those people are not going to give up without one hell of a struggle. You've said it's going to be painful, but have you any idea just how painful it's likely to be? These people will not give up without a struggle. They've already demonstrated their willingness to countenance death on a large scale, pollution, misery. Do you think they're going to stop? Do you think they're going to be, as Peter Joseph suggested, nearly embarrassed when you tell them your wonderful message? I suspect it'll be a lot worse than that.
The they out there, the monetary system, the money people will probably object to this tremendously. How do you see a transition? Will they give it up?
No, they will continue to object until their business collapses. And that's what happened. The banks are collapsing. General Motors is out, so we gave them money and bailed them out. But General Motors will not succeed because there's not that much purchasing power out there now. Not only that, General Motors never submitted a design for a car to the public to look at, which gets more miles per gallon, lower in cost than Japanese cars. They have no project. And if they have no project, it'll fail again, and the bailout will not occur again. You have to let this system go right into the crash. That's where it's going. And it has to crash. Unfortunately, I wish people were sane enough to say, how can we make a better future for humankind? They don't say that. They're always protecting themselves. General Motors, Ford, oil corporations tend to protect themselves. I didn't make it that way. That's the way it is.
Jacque, there's another group of people that I'm sure you've heard of in India. They live in a city called Oroville, and they have a kind of different approach to the same problems that we discuss in this kind of forum. I would like to just hear your thoughts on what's going on there.
We're really not that familiar with their approach. We've never heard it.
Never heard of.
We've seen some pictures of what they're doing, but
Okay,
we
thanks.
really don't know. It's a city in India that's a more cooperative type city.
Okay, there are a group of people called technocrats. And they
A
believe,
different city.
now, they believe in making a technical society in America. But if you don't deal with the world, the Chinese will do nuclear experiments, the Russians, all the others. You can't live to yourself anymore. I've had people come to see me, wealthy people, that say, can you design a city of sustainability for us with a wall all around it? I said, look, people are not as stupid as they used to be during the last depression. They can launch stuff over your wall. If you're eating and living well, nobody can sit around and starving while you're living well. The idea of living to yourself comes from the old world. We must move toward the brotherhood of humanity. This is what all religions try to do, but they don't know how to do it. If religious people understood the Venus Project, this is exactly what religion's about. Because they said, well, you're concerned with the material world. You want to build new houses and roadways and transportation. And they said to me, my kingdom is not of this world, it's up there. So I said, you forgot the Lord's Prayer. Jesus said, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. There's no money in heaven, no business, no private ownership, no banks. If you can't get that through your head, then you're phony. I do not come here to attack anything. I'm just trying to say there is another way. Let's look it up. Look up the Venus Project. Try to become very familiar with it so you can talk about it and not project. Like a lot of people tell me, a bunch of scientists in gray telling us what to do. You will work in Area D. You, Area K. That comes from Hollywood. 1984, Brave New World, Atlas Shrugged. All these are systems to keep you from putting in a new system. So it's written by Hollywood hacks, not scientists. Even Star Trek, they kill each other with laser weapons, blow up spaceships. This isn't the future. This is a psychopath's idea of the future.
I wanted to mention something about the transition because people always put this transition on us. And we work all the time. We've been working. The difference between the activists that are kind of the watchdog of what's going on here and always telling what's wrong, it's really verbal masturbation to us because they really don't pose an alternative to direction. Jacque's been working on this all his life. I've been working on it for 33 years with him. If we don't get out there another direction to work towards that could work for all of our benefits and talk to other people and show it and work towards it in any profession in any way that you can, other people are going to do your thinking for you, and that's called fascism. So, you know, the transition can happen in a lot of different ways. We don't know who we will meet out there, and the more you talk about it, the more we might have access to people with funding who know that this system is full of shit and want to try something else. So, you know, that's all we can say is work toward it. If you don't work toward it, I can assure you nothing will happen.
Being an industrial designer myself, I'm interested, what steps do we need to take and what can we take to change education of designers that are shaping the world of today? And my second question is, how will we motivate people, whether designers or scientists, to work and contribute to the system if everything is available freely to everyone's use? So why would someone choose to work all day and all life instead of just...
What's the motivation if everybody has access to things?
Okay. You're assuming that everybody has enough money to live well, they do nothing. That's not true. People with lots of money don't find enough time in the day. They're educated to do things. So I would say, years ago, again, talking to myself, how are we going to change this world? And I talked and designed the system. Then I said to myself, how do you know it'll work? I said, I don't know. So I don't know if you know this, I joined the Ku Klux Klan in Miami and dissolved it in a month and a half alone. Then I joined the White Citizens Council. They believe they hate foreigners, darks, Latins, Filipinos, all foreign. And I joined that organization by talking like they did and then turned it around. In 1 month, I dissolved it completely. Then I asked a question when I lived in New York, what are the most backward people in this area? And the consensus was the Arabs. I said, what makes you think they're backward? They still believe the earth is flat. So I said, boy, if you can turn them around, that'll be pretty good proof of your system. So I called up the guy in charge. You always work with a guy or girl in charge. I called a guy named Elbaz, an Arab. And I called him and said, can I speak with you? He was the head of the Arab group. So he said, from where your father he born? That's the way he spoke. I said, Lebanon. He says, you are Arab? That's the way he spoke. I said, Air means yes in Arabic. I speak a little bit of many different languages. I'm not an Arab. So he says, come and sort me. Please come and see me. So I came to see him, and he set aside time for me, and he said, you believe the world he round? I said, yes. He went, that means in his custom it can't be. So he held his hands up like this. He said, he pointed to his head to show me how smart he was. Then he said, if the world he round, man fall me down here. All the water, he fall me down from the round world. He has to be flat to make the water not fall me down. So I knew here's a guy I'm dealing with that is really sincere, and he couldn't understand the earth being round. So I gave him a balloon to hold in his hand, and I rubbed it fast with fur. Then I put cornflakes in his hand and told him to hold it away from the balloon, not near it. And all the cornflakes, due to electrostatics, jumped up to the balloon. Does anybody doesn't understand that? If you charge a balloon or create static electricity, the cornflakes in your hand will jump up to the balloon and stick to it. So I showed him that, and his jaw hit the pavement. He said, world he magnet? I said, air. Ah. And he went and explained that to all the Arabs. An hour and a half I turned him around. Now even my mother, I brought a Japanese kid home one day, and she said, I don't want that kind around. Loud enough for him to hear. And I met him in California. I had been home a long time. So he left. He says, I'll see you, Jacque. He was an American, born. And I tried reason on my mother, which is to try to sit and reason together. That's strictly bullshit. If my mother doesn't read and deal with the real world, she can't handle that. So reason failed. They always told me in all books, let us sit and reason together. You can't reason with a person that knows nothing. So I said, boy, if you can't get to your mother, Jacque, you're not going to change the world. So I made up a story. I said, I was swimming in the East River, and there's no way to get ashore. There's a high wall. And Masato Takashiki worked on a boat, and he threw a life raft to me. My mother said, oh my God, you mean he saved your life? I said, yes. She said, no, I've been so cruel and crude. I said, yes, you have, Mother. So she said, please, ask him to come back for dinner. I want to beg forgiveness. He saved your life. My God, I've been so wrong. I said, well, I don't know if you'll come back now. The reason I said that, I want my mother to plead with me. So she's pleading, please, Jacque, ask him to come back. I feel terrible. So I called Masato and told him about the false story of him saving my life. And I said, when you walk in the door, my mother's going to hug you and kiss you because that's the way she was brought up. So at dinner, she was really talking to him. So I walked out of the room and I came back when Masato went to the washroom. I said, Mother, what do you think? She said, you know, he's just like you and I, has a wonderful family in Japan. So I went like that. She said, you shouldn't do that. He saved your life. This is a member of the yellow race. He's a member of the yellow race. And you know, they're sneaky. I said, not Masato, she said. He's a good boy. And after a month, she puts her arm around Masato. She really likes him and calls him son. Once that was established, said, Mother, he never saved my life. She said, you little devil, I would have never opened the door either. So sometimes logic and reason doesn't work for some people. So you tell them a fib, get them to listen to the guy for a little while, and then you can tell them that you had to do that because you couldn't understand it any other way. Now, one person, did you love your mother? I used to say in some areas, other areas not at all. So love is not a constant, it fluctuates up and down. Once you understand that, you'll understand that sometimes you love your boyfriend, sometimes not at all, sometimes you'll hate him, sometimes you'll like him very much. Love is a fluctuating system, not a constant. That's why you get disappointed. People get married, they scratch their head, and they come weeping to me. I don't know if I really love my husband. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. Same with yourself. Sometimes you like what you do, sometimes I should have done this, I should have done that. So if you were a duplicate of yourself in the same room, the question is how long will you be together? You know what I mean? So we are not sane enough yet. We live in the early stages of civilization. We are not civilized yet. If we were, there wouldn't be prisons, police, war, warships, bombers. You understand that? That's what I mean by we're not civilized. To become civilized takes a long time, and it's stage by stage. There's no final frontiers. So if you say, well, I know an intelligent person, an intelligent electrical engineer of 75 years ago couldn't get a job today. So what you call intelligent today is a jackass as a rule that matches the value systems they gave you. There are very few intelligent people in the world that have methods of solving problems. We live on the backs of probably no more than 50 people that gave us electric lights, heating systems, power generation. It isn't the whole world that you have to convince. All it takes is 7,000 people to operate everything on Earth. You don't need millions of people agreeing with you. Who the hell do you think runs corporations? Very few people. I'm sorry again, but that's the way it is. All I can say now is thank you for attending. Do what you can.
Wait. I just wanted to mention that if you're interested in helping, especially in the UK here, there's a fantastic Zeitgeist movement group here, Andrew and Heather and Tom and others. So you can check out the ukproject.com. Did I get that right?
We've still got 25 minutes. Who wants to ask this guy up here? Yeah.
Oh, no, it's a Zeitgeist movement, ukproject.com, yeah.
Yes, sorry, back to my question is how would you change designers' education to drive them in the direction of the Venus Project?
How would you change education to drive it in the direction of the Venus Project?
You never give kids grades. If you do that, you say, I got an A, I got a failure, you build jealousy and envy. So our schools do not use words that they've learned thousands of years ago, like that's wrong. That's wrong, doesn't tell anybody anything. But if you say, if a kid spells cat with a K, if you say very close, it's just one letter we change. Don't say that's wrong.
No, but I mean specifically in designing.
I didn't get that.
In designing?
In designing, yes. How should designers be educated? Not general education.
I think he's in design. How would designers be educated?
Depends if the design, are you an industrial designer or fabric designer?
Industrial.
Industrial. Industrial design would be based, the teaching of industrial design, on minimum waste of resources. Never design products to wear out and break down. Do the best you can. An old Volkswagen, if you drive an old Volkswagen and I drive a Mercedes, if your brakes fail, I die. So there are no old cars on the road. They weigh as much as a new car. So everybody, you don't own anything in the future. The cars are lined up for your use. You have access to cars, sailboats, but you don't own anything. You live in a house as long as you like to. You can make a painting, but you can't sell it. You can give it to people. So when you do away with ownership and people have access to the necessities of life without servitude, then you have the beginning of the civilized world. You don't have that yet.
Hello. Oh. Hello. I always find myself reading articles about scientists finding genes that may affect our personality. Is this bullshit, or do our genes get affected by our environment? What's your opinion on that?
About genes. You know, they're trying to hang everything on genes today. In the United States, they're looking for the Democratic gene, the gay gene, the Republican gene. And it's really the environment that shapes behavior. You're not born with bigotry and prejudice and hatred and a propensity to any type of value system. You pick that up in the environment. So if you have the ability to run faster or better, that doesn't give you the ability to extract significance in a culture. It doesn't give you that much advantage. So they're hanging, that's right, they're hanging everything on the gene today, and it really negates trying to design a society to improve everyone, to give everybody the ability to be creative. You know, it diverts where the problem really is.
The geneticists, by the way, are sincere people, but they think it's all in the genes. Actually, all you inherit in parents may be the color of the eye, the shape of the nose, the color of the skin, but you don't inherit values. You don't inherit bigotry and prejudice, as Roxanne pointed out. That's learned. But we know of no human being that inherited. They used to think that a Chinese baby can learn Chinese faster than an English baby because of generations of speaking Chinese. So they took an English baby and a Chinese baby, they both learn at the same rate. So you can't pass on learned ability to your kid, but you can pass on a propensity toward liver disease or heart disease. That can be passed on through the genes. But you can't pass on knowledge, values, or concepts of social arrangements. That you have to learn. That's why I say I make more mistakes than anybody I know. I also say I've never made a mistake in my life. Now here's what that means. That means the first guy that fooled with nitric acid and glycerin disappeared and the building. And his brother-in-law wrote, never fool with that stuff. What do you think? Where do you think people get ideas from? There are no answers. If a man makes wings till they're too small and jumps off a hill, he may die. That's the way the other guy learns to make the wings larger. You only learn through pain. Dr. Ehrlich did 606 experiments before he can control syphilis. Edison, 7,000 different elements before he found one that didn't burn out. But if you show kids movies of guys like Leonardo da Vinci, and they say he was so far ahead of his time They never show you who you're associated with. The friends of Leonardo da Vinci talked of gears and levers. You never heard of that. No one can jump way ahead of his society. Then there's Nostradamus. Now, Nostradamus was always wanted by the French police for fraud. Did you know that? And the people that translated Nostradamus left that out. It wouldn't sell. Then a guy named Frank Scully wrote a book called Behind the Flying Saucers. And they hired me to look at the evidence. So this guy said he was picked up by a flying saucer, taken around the universe, and brought back. So I said, what was the inside of the flying saucer like? It was a big leather belt that held him in place. Anybody that can fly 100 million light years through space doesn't need a leather belt. Then he said there was a lot of blinking lights. Let's see if I can point this out. In an airplane, they have an instrument that moves and says your fuel mixture is too rich. So the pilot adjusts the fuel mixture. In the future, when the needle touches that, we'll change the fuel mixture. You don't need blinking lights. You know, an advanced civilization doesn't have somebody talking on the radio like that. It doesn't have anything like that. And the flying saucer, the big one that most of you have seen, has 3 spheres underneath it and portholes. And that was a 1927 chicken brooder, Sears and Roebuck. So all of the flying saucers that I have seen, that people photographed, were out of scale with the trees in the background. They're only this size. They said they were 500 feet in diameter, you know. So I have a way of checking those things. So I told Frank Scully, so far, I haven't met anybody. So he said, have you ever met Dr. G? I said, I never heard of him. He said he was at Wright Field and he took the flying saucers apart. Now, I was at Wright Field during the war making safety devices only. So I met Dr. G, and I said, Dr. G, is it true that you couldn't drill through it and machine cut it with anything? He said, yes. He says, I've taken a lot of them apart. And how do you do that if you couldn't drill them, saw them, cut them? He said, well, I use a new method. They went together like a jigsaw. So I said, do you happen to have a piece of flying saucer? He said, yes, in my car. I said, wonderful, bring it in. I'm not closed on that. So I brought in a piece of material that he said we couldn't drill through. It was transparent. It looked like lucite or plexiglass to me. And that doesn't mean I'm right. So I asked Mrs. Scully, can I use your oven? And I tied it in a knot and gave it back to the guy. And he says, I must have brought the wrong material. Maybe he did. So I said, can you bring the right material next week? And there was a whole gathering at Scully's home. And he brought me a metal part, and it still had the Army serial number on it. It was the center of a Hamilton standard propeller. So I said, I brought my catalog and showed it to Scully. He said, Jacque, if I put your stuff in a book, it won't sell. The same with Nostradamus. Get the French book called Nostradamus. You'll see what the real guy was like. The translation was not like that. Don't take my word for anything. I'll tell you where to get the information. Yes?
Yeah,
Did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I'd like to ask a question about scarcity, and not with regards to production, but more about in nature. Like, for example, if you know the apartment buildings you showed, like in your video.
Can you hold the mic closer to your mouth?
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
If you know the apartment buildings you showed at the start in your video, well, if a lot of people, if the most desirable one is the penthouse apartment, you know, that's essentially that's scarcity right there. And if the apartment's built in like the most desirable part of the country, let's say, you know, who decides who gets it? There's scarcity right there. So you can have abundance in terms of food and production, all these things, but there's still scarcity that exists in nature because, you know,
there's still scarcity.
we've got limited
more
space.
Desirable places to live or penthouses.
You're talking about the present day system. You see, have you seen
talking about your houses, the uppermost apartment would be the penthouse and more desirable place to live?
Okay.
Yeah, I mean...
So instead of making fair, square buildings, if you do that, most people want the corner apartment where the view is better. So we make our buildings round so the view is pleasant for everybody, and some of the buildings turn.
Yeah, but you could argue that...
In other words, what you try to do is educate people and give them whatever they want in their home. In other words, we only design the exterior, you pick the interior. Now, here's how you pick a home in the future, so you'll understand. In the Venus Project's design, you sit in front of a plastic bubble, about 3 feet in diameter, and you talk. You say, I want a home. The bubble is the architect. It says, what kind of home? Most normal people are not sure. So different homes appear in turn. Until you say stop, something like that. Then she says, I'd like the children's room next to the adult bedroom, and it moves as you talk. Then your husband or your boyfriend says, I'd like a balcony sticking out over the pool. And the machine says, how far out? And you say, 8 feet. And the machine says, if you go 12, you can have a dining area. It doesn't override you, it merely suggests. The machines are subject to the will of people. They don't override anybody. They just say, if your bumper is this high on a car and you have sonar in front of your car, you can't hit another car. Now, if you make your car of the memory metal and you dent the fender, you press straight again and the fender goes back out. Who will hate you? The people that straighten out fenders. There's not a thing you can design and stand for that someone won't hate you for, no matter what. Yes. Somebody over there.
Jacque, I was just wondering whether your concerns about the planet and the resource-based economy ties in with what scientists are saying now about our planet and the way it's moving and climate change and the fact that resources are running out at a faster rate. How would we tackle those problems and make a transition through to the Venus Project if we've only got, say, as scientists are saying, 15 to 20 years on the current lifestyle that we have before we start seeing real problems within the planet's own cycle, like climate change and that kind of thing?
Can you tell me what it is?
It's talking about the problems of climate change. Do you see that that's a problem?
That's not up to us. We have no power. It's up to you. If you don't demand that the government looks into the Venus Project or that a member of the Venus Project can present it on television, if you say, all I hear from is army people and military people, I don't hear new ideas. Why don't you have the Venus Project on there? That's up to you. If you do nothing, we have no power. Don't put it on. What are you going to do about the tsunami waves? Did you put me in charge of that? I can't do anything about it. Yes.
Thank you. How can criminals and corrupt individuals be dealt with in a world where there are no justice systems?
Okay. First of all, there's no money anymore, you know. So instead of, I look at everybody as criminal. Supreme Court judges, Parliament, government, all criminal. They've all been paid off. The drug companies pay off senators to carry out their problem. So what are you going to do with the criminals? When you go to a supermarket, you buy a box of Wheaties. If you open the box, sometimes the Wheaties are halfway down. To me, that's criminal. Small print is criminal. So most people are criminals. You don't, when you work in a department store, you don't say, if you go elsewhere, you can get the same product cheaper. You're a criminal. And if you big lips, thick lips are the in thing, you put the lipstick higher than your lip. That's deceptive. The whole thing is this guy with a white collar that says, I now pronounce you man and wife. Who the hell is he? And then if you don't get along, some lawyers say they cost you $3,000 to split. Everybody makes a buck on human misery. So I'm saying today, it's very terrible because people don't act always in your behalf. They act in terms of finances. And the same thing when a doctor says, I think your kidney has to come out. I don't know if he's trying to pay off a new yacht or a house or whether my kidney has to come out. I don't know. I don't trust the money system. So there was a hurricane in Florida, southern Florida, that wiped out hundreds of houses. So I designed a conical-shaped building, like an inverted cone. No hurricane or whirlwind can suck the roof off. On top, I put a turbine, so the hurricane blows it around, keeps the refrigerators going, and the lights. So I asked people, the government does this. It says, there's a terrible hurricane coming, get out of your house, go away. So I was waiting on the freeway and the stop car and say, where are you going? I don't know, but I'm getting the hell out of here. They don't have a place for you. So we would have hurricane-proof shelters all through the West Indies, tsunami detectors, high wave detectors, and the beaches would look like continuous thing, and the lifeguard would be in the middle. So you can see 3 beaches at the same. You know, when you look into the Venus Project, you'll see all these designs. We don't say we want to build a better world where everybody gets along. We go with how you do that. Otherwise, you have nothing but a verbal hobby. That's what religion is, a verbal hobby.
Do you agree that culture and identity are human rights? And if you do, how would the Venus Project, or your vision for the future, preserve that right?
I didn't get that question either.
Do you agree that identity and culture are a human right? And if you do, how will the vision for the future preserve that right?
Do you believe that identity and culture are human rights? And how would you preserve that in the Venus Project?
Humans are moved out of government, number one. And government becomes cybernated. That means computers are connected to industry, transportation, and agriculture, and they produce food and transportation of goods and services. They do not control people. I want to repeat that. They do not control people, just the production lines and factories producing goods and services. So you don't have people in a position to corrupt
You're
anything.
asking about tradition. There was once a guy that came up to Jacque and said, I'm Jewish. Would you permit tradition in the future?
Jewish tradition.
Yeah, Jewish tradition. And he said, sure, we'll permit traditions, but the Klan meets for 25, the Klan's been meeting for 75 years. Would you permit that tradition? They said, no, not that.
So how do you decide? Traditions that have long outlived their usefulness, that have no correlation with the physical world, will be surpassed. If we don't have the knowledge to do that, we will hurt ourselves. For example, in Poland, they believed in the cavalry. The Germans believed in war tanks, and they wiped the hell out of thousands of Poles on horses because they couldn't make the change. In America, there was a general called Billy Mitchell who believed that airplanes could sink a ship. The Navy said never. So they put it to test, and they sank 2 ships, and the Air Force was moved up. Then came the missile men with guided missiles, which said that you don't need men in bombers. You can project a trajectory and wipe out certain factories. And the aircraft people said, you got to have humans flying airplanes. Then after the missile men got in, by the way, they got in, the laser men came and said, from outer space we can burn cities. You don't need bombers. And they fought the laser men. You always got the in-group saying airplanes were good one time, lasers today. Then look at what the Chinese are doing. They're not building warships and airplanes too much. They're building computer jamming systems. That's where the future is. If you jam the computers that control the Army's equipment, missiles and everything else, that's where it is, not warships and millions of men. So if you're not smart enough to know that, you will be surpassed. Okay.
Sorry, we've got to wind it up there now, guys. Jacque's got another lecture in a couple of hours, and he needs to get some rest. And I hope he's answered all your questions. I mean, he can't remember everything. You can check out on the Venus Project website, and you get more answers that you need. But just put your hands together for Jacque Fresco and Roxanne Meadows.
The Venus Project isn't perfect. It's just a lot better than what we got.
It's up to us. It's up to us now as well. Yeah.
We're all the same. There's no.
It's up to us to do this, not just Jacque on his own.
That tells you what to do.